So yesterday was my mother's 61st birthday. And I thought about how if she was still here, every last one of us, all of her children, all 10 of us that are left would have been somewhere, probably at California Dreaming or Ruth Chris or Rio Steakhouse. We would have been somewhere celebrating her. My mother was a foodie. She loved people, especially us. And she loved good food. Oh yeah, or we would have been at Olive Garden. How I forget about Olive Garden? That's her favorite restaurant. But we would have been at one of these restaurants excited about celebrating her and just loving up on her and just honoring her in her special day, just all the things. But I even thought about how we all would have came with our own separate card, of course, with money in it, because my mother did not play that. She said, when you give somebody a card, you make sure there's some money in it. That's how she always did when it came to other people, and that's how she raised us to do. So we would have been somewhere trying to outdo the other sibling, trying to make sure we got that money in that card. So when mother opened it, she saw her coin was in the card. But that wasn't yesterday for us because she's no longer here. And I just started thinking about the whole process and how she even passed away. A lot of people don't even know this, but my mother passed away almost a week after her father. Like, we buried my granddaddy on a Saturday in December, and we buried her the following Saturday. We always would tell others, like, my mother died from a broken heart. Like, we always knew, or we felt like she died from a broken heart, because there was no way this woman that appeared healthy and just was fine and life was good. She was in college. She had already graduated with her associate. She was going back. She was going to school for criminal justice, and she was doing good. She was looking good. She was healthy for all we know, and life was good all the way up until the point of her father's passing. And I'll never forget. So when we got this phone call, we came from all different areas, rushing to my grandmother's house back home, right up the lane from where we stayed, because everyone stayed on the same lane for the most part. And we rushed down there, and my mother I remember when I walked into my grandma's house, my granddad was still there. He had just passed. The coroner didn't even come yet. So my mother was in there. I looked at her. She looked like she was handling everything pretty decent. I looked around the room. Everybody was just kind of quiet, but they were still having small conversations. And I remember thinking like, dang, okay, mother handling this pretty decent. Because in my mind, I was like, well, I know before this moment that every fourth Sunday before this moment, it was like, if he ever was sick, she would instantly become sick. Like, she was one of his caregivers. My grandma and my granny was still living together. So for the most part, my grandmother was a caregiver. But there would be times that my granddaddy would call on my mother. My mother was the child that lived the closest to them. So it didn't matter if it was late at night, in the midnight, early in the morning. It didn't matter what time it was. If my grandmother wasn't able to aid him, then my mother would be right there ready to aid him. And so there would be times that we would come back home. I stayed in upstate at the time, but then I had my younger sisters that were still fellowshipping at our home church. And so every fourth Sunday they would go back home and fellowship and also praise dance, because that's what we did. So every Sunday after praise dancing, our routine would normally be go out to eat. And mind you, at this point, my mother had already lost a child. My second oldest brother had passed away. Military, came down here for a funeral, came down here from his great-grandma's funeral on a Friday, was trying to surprise the family. He ended up going out, and on his way back home that night, or that morning, about 3 miles from the house, he ended up hitting a tree and passed away. So he was coming home to go to my great grandma's funeral, and ended up on a Friday, and ended up having his funeral that following Friday. Even with that, my mother did not. I did not see my mother responding that way. I specifically remember when the sheriff came to the house, the first thing my mother said, and she said it with all her mouth. She was like, "What now, God? What now? What do you want me to? What would you have me do now?" That was how she responded at that moment. But it was something about when her daddy died. It was something about when her daddy died that really, she couldn't handle it. She couldn't accept it. Like, her daddy, like, really? And she went all the way back to this child state where she was just like, nobody never loved me like my dad. And my mother experienced so much at such an early age. It's just, but that moment though, it's like, that was the moment that everything, all of the rejection she experienced, all of the things came to a head. Fast forward from that night at grandma's house. At this point, my mother has to get ready for this funeral. She's helping with the arrangements, and now she's requesting that her and her siblings sing. My mother was a singer. She was singing since she was 3. She will sing a place down. Everybody knew my mother as a singer, and really, that's what she did. But she was requesting that her and her siblings sing at the funeral. And I can't remember the name of the song. I just know the song had lyrics, something like, "Keep beckoning me," or something like that. Like, in hindsight, me and my siblings talked about it several times, just thinking about how the lyrics of the song almost was like, for my granddaddy. Like, I can't remember the details of the song. I hope, if I do, I'm going to write some of the lyrics here. But mother sung that song. Now, she did some singing in her life, but that day she sung that song. Everybody was going up to her just saying, "Man, you did so good." Like, just telling her how great she did. First of all, by being able to hold herself up, and she did a really good job. She sung that. Boy, mother really sung that day. But then Christmas, because this is around Christmas time. So now at this point, this is a few days after the funeral, because he passed that Saturday before Christmas. And I can't remember what day Christmas was on that week, or that year, but either way, he passed that Saturday. We celebrated Christmas during the week. And all of her children that were local, we came there. We had our matching PJs. We brought our children, and we were staying there for Christmas Eve, bringing in Christmas. Yep, all of us that could, all of her children that were local. And I got to make this correction real quick, y'all. But I said earlier I was in upstate. I was actually right here, closer to her, right in, I think it was Sumter, South Carolina, which was a lot closer than upstate. I don't know why. But either way, we piled in on her that Christmas Eve. Pajamas, like, we just was all up around her, just all loving up on her and all the things. And all mother could do, every time we turned around, mother was in her phone looking at videos of granddaddy. She was happy to have us there, don't get me wrong, but it was just like a piece of her had left. All she could think about was just her daddy. She was a daddy's girl. All she could think about was her daddy. So that's all she did. She looked at those pictures, even in the kitchen the morning of Christmas, and getting the food together and stuff. There would be moments she would just stop, and she would just go in her phone and just look at videos, look at pictures. And we would hear granddaddy on the videos coming from the phone. Like, that was all she did. And a few days after celebrating Christmas, because Christmas was the 25th. My mother died on the last day of 2017. She did not make it into 2018. A few days after celebrating Christmas with my mother, we all get a phone call. And we all rush back to the same lane that we grew up on. From every direction. We get to this house and the ambulance is there. Mother had a heart attack. They rushed her to the hospital. They were successful at getting her there. She had recovered. She was doing good. We went up there to check on her, went back home, check on the children. She stayed there a few days. It wasn't until New Year's Eve, or the day before New Year's Eve, that me and one of my siblings called up there, and we wanted to get up there and see her again. And Mother was like, y'all, I'm good. I'll be home New Year's Eve. Mother's response was, y'all, I'm good. I feel fine. I'll be back home. I'm coming back home. Okay. So we thinking she coming back home. But even as I'm making this video, I'm just like, oh, wow, she was talking about home, not the home we was thinking about. She was talking about home. Looking back at it, like, it all make a little bit more sense, I guess. But she never made it home. We got a phone call first thing New Year's Eve, 5 o'clock that morning. My stepdaddy called. I was up already. 5 something that morning, he called and gave us the news. I'm not going to go into detail about what happened after that, but what I will say is I share all of that because I want to share with y'all some things. What I love so much about God is how much he loves us, and he's always showing us this. What I didn't tell y'all was months before my mother passed, we were blessed with a niece, which was born on her actual birthday. Yesterday was my mother's birthday. Every year for my mother's birthday, instead of moping and just thinking about what coulda, shoulda, woulda, we are now granted the opportunity to celebrate life. We don't have to mope about death and just be sad the entire day. We have the opportunity to celebrate life. My niece turned 7 yesterday. She turned 7 yesterday. Every year for my mother's birthday, we don't have to worry about, oh, God always is intentional. He's always intentional. My niece was like the ram in the bush. Her life, her coming in on the exact day that my mother entered the world years ago. And so instead of not being able to celebrate her, now we have the opportunity to celebrate my niece, which is somebody else's daughter, which is my mother's granddaughter. We're able to celebrate life. God knew that we needed something to kind of, not to distract us, because Lord knows I'm going to honor my mother. Even just in reflecting or just thinking about who she was when she was here and just going through those memories that she left us with. And so it'll never be a year that I will probably still wake up sad or still have those sad moments and stuff, but it's just the fact that I don't have to stay there, and God made sure, he was very intentional that he gave us a way, My second point, God loves us. The same thing I said before, same thing I'm saying now. God loves us. God loves us more than anybody else could ever love us. He loves us more than anybody else in this world. And so I want you to keep that in mind. More than your spouse, more than your mother, more than your father. That was a child. That was the child, the broken child, the hurt child in my mother that just couldn't bounce back from what she had been experiencing when her father passed. I don't know what it's like to have a father that really, really, rock with you, but my mother did, and that man loved his daughter. And the third thing that I want to share is God loves us. God alone is enough. God's grace is sufficient. God is enough. His love is enough. Did I say that already? Even with parenting the children, teaching the children this early on, because one day you might not be here. And in your absence, God is still good. God is still good. He'll be a mother to the motherless and a father to the fatherless. That is his love for us. So, just as intentional as God is about that ram in the bush, just as intentional as he is about His grace being sufficient even in our weakness, we too must be intentional about sharing with our children just how good God is and how much He loves us, so that in our absence, there is a love greater than the love that you have been experiencing here. And again, us as parents, we have to make sure that our children are fully aware of that love, that there is somebody that loves you way more than I do. There is somebody that you never saw before, but they love you way more than I ever could. I do not have the capacity to love in that way. So, yeah, that is what I wanted to come on here and talk about. It was something else I was about to say, y'all. I forgot what it was. I forgot what it was. What was it?